Hello, this is how to connect up your RGB products. I'm going to keep this tutorial as generic as I possibly can so that you can hopefully use this information with any brand's stuff as well. But of course, it's not going to be as good as if you find a specific tutorial for that product. All right, let's get into it. All right, so this is a digital RGB controller box. These are probably the most common RGB system that we and many other brands offer. As you can see, there are ports all around the sides for your fans, plus your power port and the port that connects up to your motherboard. There's also this little guy, which you only need to worry about if you're going to link up multiple controller boxes, which we can show you if you want. Just leave a comment down below and let us know and we can make a separate tutorial on that. Best way to look at a box like this is basically think of it as a middleman. It basically talks to your motherboard on behalf of your fans. First step, as you may guess, is going to be to plug in your fans. Now you can plug them into pretty much any port that's convenient for their position within your case. So they don't really have to plug it in any order or anything like that. But I mean, if you can, plugging them in, numerical order might also be useful for you, but it's not gonna make a huge difference. So I'm just gonna plug in my 3 fans because we have 3 fans today and most people have 3 fans when they're installing fans into the first 3 ports. So they really only go in one way. As you can see, I tried to put it in the wrong way, it doesn't go in. So you just basically slot them straight on in there and make sure they are definitely in, give them a little wiggle, get them nice and snug, and they basically will sit in like that. So next you're gonna need to power it up, and for that you're gonna need this little guy. So he comes in your fan box. Fan box? It's not really the right way to put it. One end will plug into your Molex or SATA cables depending on which brand's RGB products you're using. So for us it's Molex. The other side will plug into your controller box. So the purpose of this is to power up the controller box effectively. So first thing you're gonna wanna do is find the spot where it goes. This is the one we're looking for. So you're gonna wanna find the port where it goes into. Again, it's only gonna go in one way because it has very clear construction. So slide him on in, he's in nice and tight. This side is going to go into your power supply. So here's one I prepared earlier. So you're looking for this. This will plug into your power supply. So you would have already done this when you hooked up your power supply. So this cable then goes into this. Molex is always a 50-50 shot of whether it's gonna work. So, there we go. My sacrifice to the gods did work today and I plugged it in first try. Look at me go. So now we have powered up the controller box itself. We've connected up our fans, we've got our power. Now what we need to do is connect the box up to the motherboard so that they can have a chat and get to know one another and tell it what to do with the fans. That's where this last cable is going to come in. So it has this end here, this end will go into your motherboard, and then we have the other end which goes into the box. I'm going to stand still and let Miles get a nice shot because I'm a nice person. So what you're going to be looking for us in particular, is a USB 2.0 9-pin port on your motherboard. 9 times out of 10 motherboards I've seen, they're either on the bottom or sometimes they're kind of on the side, but 9 times out of 10 they're going to be on the bottom. So that's what you're going to look for. And that's what we're going to do now. So from memory, there is one, yeah. So the easiest way to find them, I find often they have literally the words USB, on the port itself, literally under the pins. And that's the port you're looking for. Under pressure. There you go. Now you're gonna plug the other end into the controller. You're looking for this little guy, this little tiny, I believe he's like a USB something, I'm confused. USB 2, USB 3, USB-C, micro USB? Yeah, micro USB, there you go. I knew I'd get there eventually. And you basically just want to grab one of the 2 and you can just pop him on in. And there we go. Now, if you're wondering, Sarah, why is there 2? Well, you can hook up another one if you want, another box, and you can just plug that right in. You can also plug in things like we have an LCD screen for our Tower 500s or our Series 500s. you can hook that up to this. So there's a couple of other reasons that you can have the second one, but if you don't need the second one, it's fine. Just bundle it on up and just tuck it in with the rest of your cables. But you don't have to use the second one. It's just there as an option. So this box, as I mentioned earlier, is digital, so you will need to download the relevant brand's RGB software to then customize the fans and do all that extra good stuff. But basically, that is how to set it all up to be used. Woo! So what if you don't have a controller box? So what if the only thing your fans came with was a bunch of random cables like these? Well, if that is the case, then you're probably working with ARGB fans like these ones. So in the case of ARGB, you do have a few options for how you want to set them up. One is that if your case is also an ARGB case, like this one behind me is, you might find a little controller like this one, potentially, depending, or this one, which are our newer controllers. They will look different if there are different companies' controllers as well. But before we go any further, let's go through the parts of these controllers, what the different things use if you do have one yourself. So I'm going to use the older of our two controller options available here today because it's probably the one that you'd probably see most likely. So here in my hand, this is the SATA power cable here. This is basically what you're going to plug into your power supply to power it all, just like we did for the digital controller. That one used Molex, this one uses SATA. So depending on, again, what brand you're using, you may use Molex or SATA for whatever you're doing, but this one uses SATA power. So that's this one. Next, we have the reset switch button. So if you have an ARGB case, quite often or sometimes you can hook up the reset button to your RGB or ARGB controller, and then you can actually switch your colors via that instead of anything else. So I'm going to talk a bit more about how to do that later, but that is an option for you as well. Next, we have the LED out port. So this you can use if you want to hook up an additional ARGB product to this controller that's not already like the fans that will be hooked up at the beginning anyway. So for example, an ARGB AIO, additional fans like these, you can pop into here as well, but that's kind of what that's for. It's for putting extra things into the controller that are also ARGB that you want to sync all up together. The next one we have here, this is a generic fan port. So best example I could say to use this for is if you have a rear fan that you want to connect up as well, using one like this is super fine. If you don't want to hook it up to your motherboard, you can hook it up to this. So that's what that's for. Then you've got your 3 ARGB fan ports. So these often will be the case of, they'll already be plugged in. When you buy your ARGB case, that'll have a controller like this in it. And these will be like, you know, your 3 front fans or whatever pre-installed fans you may have that come with your ARGB case, they will often already be plugged into this controller. And that's why I mean that you can add additional ARGB fans to the controller if you want via the use of this little extra cable, the extra LED out cable. Last on this controller, we have the motherboard in port. This is what you will be hooking up your controller to your motherboard with. So if you have an ARGB case, and all you want to do is just plug it in. Basically, all you're going to need to do is power it up and plug this into your motherboard. I'm going to explain how to do that later, but that's where this will plug into, and that's what its purpose is for. So you may have a different controller. It's going to depend on your brand and, you know, when the case was made. So for example, this is our newer controller that we have for like our more recent cases, like the S200. That will have this in it as well. This just has a few other options. It comes with 4 fan, like ARGB fan ports if you want. It also comes with an additional LED out too. So this will let you do a wider range of LEDs. So for example, our CT fans use this. I know a lot of MSI RGB products use these particular LED ports. So that's on there as an offering as well. And this one, I think that's really, it has extra. But yeah, so that's same principle though applies. This one also comes with an extra cable. These ones look different to these because they allow you to do different things. So these ones only let you to control the RGB. These ones also let you control speed. Now the way that you control speed is you hook up this cable to your motherboard. So it's going to depend on what kind of controller you have. But I hope that that helps explain the different components of an ARGB controller, what they do, why you might want to utilize them for something. And if this was entirely unhelpful, then I'm sorry. All right, anyway, now that's all out of the way, let's install some ARGB fans. Oh, I've got to go straight into it. All right, so all right, let's start off assuming that you have a controller and you just want to use that for your pre-installed fans in your case. So you're just going to be hooking up the controller. So the main things you're going to be looking for is this. This is your splitter. So first thing we're going to do is power the fans. So look at ARGB fans as there's sort of two components. There's the fans, like getting them to spin, and then there's the other component, which is getting them to light up. So first, let's get them spinning. As you can see, here's an ARGB fan I prepared earlier. Unlike the RGB fans, these have two cables. One for your fan, like to power your fan itself, and then one for your ARGB. So we're gonna ignore the ARGB for now, we're just gonna power them up. So what we're gonna do is grab the splitter. So this splitter will come with your fans more than likely. Again, it's gonna depend on what fan box you have, but often these will come with your fans. So we're gonna plug this on in. Okay, all three fans are now plugged into this one splitter. Now this goes into your motherboard. Now, there's a few different ports you can plug them into. I 9 times out of 10 will just look for a sys fan port, like a system fan port. Again, it's gonna really depend on what you're looking for, but usually that is a totally fine port to put it in. So let's find one. So next thing I'm gonna do now, we've got power. So this will mean that the fans will spin. You can tell the difference between the two different cables because the ARGB cables look incredibly different to the standard fan ones. There's actually the ports themselves are smaller, but they also have this nifty little extra bit, which allows me to do what I'm about to do, which is daisy chain these up to each other. Basically, as you can see there, I've just connected two up to each other by just inserting the, I guess is that the male end, the female end? I don't know. The non-binary end into the other end. And basically all this does is links all three fans together. So it looks like a bit of a mess, but what I've done is connected the three fans to each other via these cables. And now we do have this end to work with and this end to work with to connect this up to the motherboard. So how do we do that? We use one of the supplied cables that also will come with your ARGB fans. These are usually very clearly marked, like ours are marked E and F. So the reason why there are multiple cables that it'll come with is that different motherboards will sometimes want different types of connections. So we have an MSI motherboard, so we're gonna be using the E cable today. The F cable is sometimes used for, I think sometimes gigabyte motherboards use them, but it's gonna be a motherboard by motherboard basis. 110%, please check with your manual. I don't know what it is. People have this thing about not wanting to read manuals. I think it's the same thing of like not wanting to ask for directions. I don't know what's the deal, but just look at the manual. The manual will tell you. If you've lost the manual, just go onto the website. You can download the manual. Oh, crazy, right? So yeah, just check the So check your manual to find out which cable that you need to use if you're not sure already. As I said, I'm going to be using this one as we do have an MSI board. So basically this cable has one end that you can see will very clearly go into our little end of our daisy chain combination that we have, if I can do it correctly. And then this will go into your motherboard. So you want to make sure that you're putting it into an additionally, like another 5-volt header, because there are also, I think is it 12, there's other headers that are not 5-volt headers that look like this. You don't want to put it into those. This is the header we're looking for. This is the only one we're looking for. We use these ones. If you're not sure, again, please check your motherboard manual. It will make sure that you're using the right one. You don't want to short circuit these things. Believe me, I've short circuited like 6 cases here. Just, it's real awkward, don't do it. Just check, okay? All right, let's plug him in. So, if I have done everything correctly, as I have explained in this tutorial, when I turn the computer on, they should all light up. I love that I lose confidence. I'm pretty sure it'll work. All right, let's find out. Oh, it's not on. I'm panicking. It's still not on. Are you on? There we go. Hey, I knew it was right the whole time. So there you go. So if you have just some ARGB fans that you want to hook up and you want to just use the motherboard software, because that's what these offer. You can't use, like, for example, RTT RGB Plus 2.0 software. They're also quite loud. You can't use our software with these. These are motherboard specific software. So for this one, you'll be using MSI's software, for example, because that's the board we have today. But yeah, so that's kind of how they look just on their own. That's one of the options that you have if you have ARGB fans and you want to hook them up. Now there's a couple other options, especially if you hate motherboard software or any software at all. If you want to completely negate software, I got you. There's some options. Let me go through them now. If you absolutely loathe software in all its forms and you want an alternative way to control your RGB, my first offering to you is via our ARGB controller. So these will come with your ARGB fans that you purchase from us. Other companies might have them, I'm not really sure, but we do. And this basically gives you a way you can scroll through this to select and change things like the mode, color, and speed of your fans without having to use any software whatsoever. And it's also super easy to set up. So let me show you how. So the first thing you're gonna do is, obviously, as you can see, there is your power. So we have SATA power for these ones. So this goes into one of your SATA ports that I prepared earlier. SATA ports are coming from your power supply, by the way. It's amazing how many people don't understand where these things come from. So these basically just slide in right like that. That is now giving power to the controller. Now we just have to connect up the controller itself to your fans. Now you'll notice this port here at the end looks very similar to the port we used to plug into this. That connects straight up to your fans that we connected up earlier. Obviously your fans are still plugged in directly to your motherboard here from before as well, giving them power, but this is just going to give them color and ARGB control. So when we turn on the PC, as you can see, they're now lit up in RGB, not the red and yellow combo we had before, and that's because they're not being controlled by the motherboard, they're being controlled by this. And we can just press the buttons on here and it'll change the colors and things like that. So that is another option for you if you are just like, software is the worst, then you can utilize something like this, and it's a super easy way to do it as well. Okay, so we're back. The controller has come back because I'm going to show you two things that we can do with the controller to set up these fans. So I've plugged in the 3 fans that go with this, so we can pretend that these are like our front fans, and we can pretend that maybe these are our AIO fans that we want to connect up as well. So we're gonna add these to the controller and then it'll be controlled that way. So that's another way that you can add additional fans if you already have 3 front fans connected to your controller. The controller here again uses SATA just like our last one, so we're going to plug that straight back into the SATA port that we plugged our controller into just before. We're going to plug the end of this one into this white one here, which is the additional LED out. So that will power these in addition to these, but now we have to connect this to the motherboard. So for that, here's the cable I prepared earlier. This will again often come with your fans or your case, depending on what setup you have, but you're looking for a cable that looks like this and like this on this end as well. So this end goes into the controller like so. Again, they can only go in one way. The other end is going to go into your 5-volt header that I banged on about earlier at the top. If I can actually get it in. There. This is a configuration you can do if you say have 3 front fans in your case that came pre-installed. You can then connect up additional fans to this by plugging them into that LED, that white LED, what is it called? I'm already forgetting. LED out. So you can basically, if you have your 3 front fans in your case with your controller, by plugging these into the LED out, you can operate additional ARGB fans if you like. So these can be additional case fans, or they can be AAO fans, things like that. So I've just removed these 3 front fans, the ones we had in these 3 here, and you'll see that without them, the ARGB doesn't work. So basically the way that it functions is kind of like, the best way I can describe it is like, you know how with fairy lights on a Christmas tree, if if 1 or 2 break, the chain is broken and therefore the rest behind that breaks. So if you don't have your 3 front fans plugged in, the ARGB won't work. So you kind of have to ensure that in this instance, you can't just chuck them in. You need to have your 3 fans that work with the particular controller plugged in first to then piggyback extra ARGB as well. So the last thing I'm going to show you is for anyone who, again, does not like software and doesn't want to use software. If you have an ARGB case, or even a non-ARGB case and you somehow have an ARGB controller, you can actually hook up your reset switch or your RGB switch, whatever you want to call it, the R switch, to your controller here to make it so that you can control your RGB via the button and not via any software. You're looking for the 2-prong reset switch port on the controller box, and that basically just switches that button from causing your case or your PC to completely reset to being at the mercy of the controller. So let's just do that and hopefully it'll make sense. He is the boy in question. All right, let's test this reset switch one, shall we? Okay, so they're all lit up, which is good. So we've got the reset switch on the top here, as you can see. Ta-da! You can switch through it. Obviously, there's only set options you can go through, so there's a bit less options for customization. If you want specific patterns or colors, it's just whatever is programmed within the controller itself. But if you're someone who just wants one color or one set, or like a set and forget kind of option, this is a great one to go with because it's super convenient, super easy, and if you change your mind, you can just press a button and change them without having to go into any sort of software. So if you have that option and that sounds good to you, there you go, that's how you do it. So there we go, that is a bunch of different ways that you could set up your RGB or ARGB products. I hope that has helped answer some questions for you and made it a little bit clearer about how to navigate the murky RGB waters. If you do have any other questions that we didn't answer in this tutorial, please drop them below. We will do our best to help you out, or if you are someone who does know the answer, jump in, help out your fellow PC builders, and we will see you in the next one. If there are any other tutorials you want to see from us too, like you want to see us setting up the software side of things when it comes to Thermaltake RGB software or even motherboard software, let us know, we can make another tutorial as well. But until the next time, I'll see you next time. God, you think this is my first video? I've done like 50 of these. What the heck? Bye.